Hello everyone, get ready for an epic battle that will shake your very souls. And so, the king bid farewell to his beloved queen and set off on a journey filled with peril, where they encountered the just defeated ragtag army of Len, who couldn't help but scoff. What on earth can 300 men do against Persia's 300,000 troops? The mockery made the king chuckle. The sheer roar of 300 warriors left the Lin general stunned as they pressed on. They finally arrived at a village, only to find it in ruins. The Persians hung villagers on trees to show off, but the warriors were unintimidated. Instead, it fueled their determination to resist. Soon, they arrived at Hot Springs Pass to defend against the Persian army. Tearing down at the massive army, the ragtag general began to falter, while the faces of the Spartan warriors showed nothing but resolve. A rather unfortunate-looking fellow suddenly approached the king, hoping to join Sparta as a true warrior. The king was deeply moved by his courage. However, he was disabled and couldn't even lift his shield properly, making it impossible for him to coordinate with the troops and potentially putting others at risk. Thus, the king had to reject his request with a heavy heart. Little did he know that his kind words planted the seeds of hatred in a man, which would be pivotal in their later. Suddenly, the earth shook violently, and the soldiers thought it was an earthquake, but the king was thrilled the Persian army was charging in. The Spartans swiftly arranged themselves into optimal ranks, and the battle was on the verge of commencing. Promptly, as the horn blast echoed out, the Persian army surged forward like a relentless tidal wave. 300 versus 300,000, unbelievable disparity. Yet Spartans stood firm, forming a solid defense with shields and spears. As the Persian army drew closer, the warriors remained still, waiting until the enemy was right on top of them to finally raise their shields. With their sheer physical strength, they managed to fend off the attack. At the king's bellow, the warriors sprung into action like a well-oiled machine. Their spears quickly took down the frontline enemies, and then they retrieved their shields to continue with their defense. This was their tactic. Remarkably, 300 men were keeping the end. The Spartan king led the charge, his spear dancing like he was in a realm of his own, leaving the enemy unable to even touch him. Eventually, he left the remaining enemy troops in shock. The Spartan king showed no mercy, leading his warriors as they pushed forward, shields raised against the Persians. They were practically pushing the Persians off a cliff. In their first battle, they won, but that was just the vanguard of the Persian forces. Every time they took a breath, the enemy horn would blare again, followed by a downpour of arrows like a monsoon. The Persian army effortlessly diffused the crisis, a true display of valor from warriors at work. In such a perilous situation, someone was still laughing. As the rain of arrows ceased, the Spartan king stood up, ready to face the next wave of This time, the Persian emperor sent in cavalry. The king remained calm, directing his warriors to raise their shields once again and form a triangle formation. Though the enemy was tall and strong, they couldn't manage to injure even one Spartan despite repeated assaults, even affording the warriors time for an apple. This infuriated the Persian emperor, but it also awakened his admiration for talent, so he personally approached the king for negotiations. Lowering himself from his lot, he promised that if the king would kneel and surrender, he'd grant him endless riches and ensure he continued to govern what originally belonged to Sparta. He also offered him co-rule of Greece. But though acknowledging the Persian emperor's might, the king refused to relinquish his pride. A Spartan warrior never bows to the enemy. Negotiations failed. Upon returning, the king built a wall with dead Persians, knowing they wouldn't back down. As night fell, the Persian emperor dispatched his strongest undead legion. They intended to catch the Spartans off guard while they retired, but they were met with fierce resistance. Piles of bodies overwhelmed the enemy leader in an instant, and the king led his men into the fray once more. The undead legion lived up to its reputation, outnumbering and coordinating well. Warriors fell, and the enemy leader unleashed a 3-meter-tall giant at the king. The king struggled, but seized an opportunity to stab the giant's eye, then swiftly beheaded it. He then shouted for the ambushed ragtag army from the nearby nation to join the fray, catching the undead legion off guard. Before long, they claimed victory. Even the undead legion couldn't withstand the trial of Spartan warriors. The self-proclaimed emperor felt a chill. Such an enemy must be eradicated at all costs. So the next day, he sent a wizard army skilled in fire, thinking they could win without morale. But surprisingly, a brave warrior charged the wizard front, hopped on one foot, and chopped the leader's throne. He then blew up all the explosives, obliterating the entire wizard army in an instant. Even the giant sent later was pushed off a cliff by the warriors, rendering all their attacks useless. The Persian emperor decided to undermine from within. recruiting the earlier rejected fellow and easily winning him over with gold and promises of pleasure. Soon he received intel that could turn the tide. If he found the shepherd's island behind Hot Springs Pass, he could flank the Spartans from two sides. If successful, the Spartans would be doomed. Meanwhile, in Spartan City, the queen waited in vain for her husband to return and had no choice but to seek help from Ion. She hoped he could send troops for support, but that shameless Ion just smiled wickedly and demanded her body as payment. The queen was forced to grovel for her husband's safety. To her shock, Ion reneged the following day, even publicly accusing her of offering herself willingly. Infuriated, she drew her sword and swiftly ended Ion's life, the fallen silver disc revealing the traitor's true nature to all. In the end, she successfully persuaded them to rescue. Meanwhile, the king pondered boosting morale when the neighboring general brought news of betrayal. The Persian emperor was set to surround Sparta the following day. Hot Springs Pass was soon to fall. Surrendering or retreating might still be possible, but the king firmly declared there was no turning back for a Spartan warrior. Dying on the battlefield was the supreme honor, deeply etched in the hearts of every warrior, and all the warriors were filled with intense fervor. Many warriors are to share a legendary tale, a story of 300 Spartans united in battle for their country, ultimately sacrificing heroically. Don't forget to subscribe.